Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular and public meeting of the Dieppe City Council on February the 9th, 2015. At the outset, I would like to thank our staff for the excellent job they did during the last 2 weeks with the snow removal and with the weather that we've had. But I also want to thank the citizens for their patience with 132 centimeters of snow and more during the last 14 days. Obviously, it did apply much pressure on the staff, on all of those qualified personnel contributed to this effort, and we thank them. When I say that efforts, in some cases we were talking about 8 9 days on at 16 hours a day to remove the snow. We appreciate the work that was done. For the opening prayer, God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Confirmation of quorum. We have a quorum. Conflict of interest. Is there any counselors who would have a conflict of interest on the agenda that is before you? No lights.
Qu'on est correct.
It would appear that everything is okay. Adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Leblanc. Did we adopt the agenda as presented? On the question, all those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried, and the agenda is adopted as is. Presentation, inquiries, and petitions. We will begin with the Kodiak Regional RCMP. Mr. George, welcome for your second time with us at the Municipal Council. As we told Superintendent Beauchamp to bring forward the items so that if you have anything to present or if the councilors have any questions to ask of you concerning the Kodiak service. Thank you, Your Worship. We appreciate very much. Even if it's winter, we are quite busy. But you must have received a letter from the community college on our annual performance plan. If you have any questions on that, I will try to answer them. I believe that most of the counselors have been contacted by the community college for that annual evaluation, and it should be done within the next few days. Okay? Any questions? Anything else? No? That's all. Thank you. Counselors, do you have any questions for the police service? Mr. Belleville? Thank you, Your Worship. The question is going backward in the back. It's always the same. I hate to repeat myself. Maybe it's new for Mr. George. That's true. I was going to apologize, but let's give him a chance to change the things that have not been changed, and then I can repeat it again. It has to do with some information that would be made public, guidelines, counsels, or suggestions for the driving a vehicle in a safe manner. I'll give you an example. Someone who approaches a control access, several brake, they stop instead of speeding up and things like that. The questions that I have tonight is I would like for the RCMP to consider to prepare on a regular basis such a thing to allow people to take better habit. It's only an example that I gave you. Obviously, there's other situation in the school or It would be for those who drive cars, male and female drivers. I notice again today there's practices that are becoming dangerous. This slow down and nobody notice it. Maybe I could give you some information afterwards, but if it could become, if there could be an article that people could read, maybe something like, did you know that this is an acceptable practice? You're driving your car in a safe manner if you do this instead of doing what they're doing. Yes, I believe that we had an article, not an article, but a tweet on Twitter last week to remove the snow from their cars. It would be something similar to that. Maybe I can meet you and we can talk about it. It's not something that is hard to do. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. Councillor Nolan. Thank you, Your Worship. Just to come back on what Councillor Bilivo said, we are working on the projects, but there have been some change in the staffing with Kodiak. Now we're looking at trying to reactivate the project. Okay. Thank you. If there's nothing else, have a good evening. You are free to go. Item number 8, questions by members of the public. No questions from the public tonight. Number 9, adoption of minutes. Regular council meeting held on January the 26th, 2015. Moved by Mrs. Dallaire, seconded by Councillor Leblanc on the question. All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried. The minutes of January 26 are adopted. Item number 10, motion, memorandum 10.1. Mr. Melanson, thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. First issue, financial contribution, as you know. The city of Dieppe will be the host of arts and the city, first time outside of Quebec. So they want a contribution of $55,000 is being asked to organize the arts and city. And then a transfer of funds because a reserve was accumulated in the year 2014 for the participation. So it's for an approval from the council to pursue that matter. For the resolution, Mr. Bellevue, if you would. Your Worship, that council authorizes the amount of $55,000 be given to the Association Acadienne des Artistes Professionnels du New-Brunswick to manage the artistic component of Les Arts et la Ville, and further authorizes that this expenditure be defrayed from account number 1-2-20-28-2320, grant hosting of events. That council authorizes a budget transfer in the amounts of $50,000 from account number 7-4-20-12-8910, General Operating Reserve Fund, in account number 1-2-20-28-2320, grant hosting of event. I so move. Moved by Councillor Béliveau, seconded by Councillor Brito on the question. Your Worship, go ahead. Simply for information purpose, I note Mr. Bugeaud, who is the main manager, community service. The V means what? Leisure and culture, what's the V? What? Mr. Burke. Culture, leisure, and community living. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Resolution is carried as presented. Excuse me. 10.2 rezoning project. 10.2.1 within the rezoning of Dieppe Boulevard. The recommendation of PAC is not to give it and the zoning of the land bearing pit and that remains R3, since the concept of this project goes against the general intention and also the lack of information to realize a complete analysis, and to the PAC, Planning Advisory Committee, recommends not to go any further with this project. Councillor Cormier. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to bring a resolution of a substitute resolution to this one. I made copies for all the councillors. You want me to distribute them? Yes, please. Your Worship, I move that the council rejects the recommendation of PAC and asks the Planning and Development Committee to supply for the meeting of February 23rd a list of term and condition to consider so that the projects can integrate itself in the ward, and that the council rejects the recommendation of PAC and is conditional to the council approving the rezoning. I so move, Your Worship. We have a substitute resolution to replace the one on the agenda, moved by Councillor Cormier. Is there a seconder? Councillor Leblanc. On the question, Mrs. Dallaire. Thank you, Your Worship. I had a few questions on the report that was prepared by PAC, but if it's voted that the report go back, if we don't have the answer tonight, it could be considered in the evaluation of the file in question. I know that in the preliminary report of December the 16th and also the report that we received for this meeting, it is said that a traffic study should be done, especially that we talk about changing the traffic pattern. My clarification question is, would that traffic study be necessary before the rezoning, or would it be a condition to the rezoning that that study be done? How does it work? Mr. Vernet? Thank you for the question, Mrs. Dalla. Generally speaking, when we need that information to make a recommendation to the council, to have a complete analysis of what we have, conditions to be imposed, we have to know them before the rezoning. It's always a must, but if it's a condition, if the council decides to go forward with the project, they can put conditions. When we have the information beforehand, before we are able to give terms and conditions with the study, and without traffic study, as it was recommended by the engineering service, it's hard to impose some conditions. Thank you for the clarification. I had a few more questions of clarification. The report that was presented to the council on December the 16th stated that the report met the conditions and term, but the report that is presented tonight for tonight's meeting says the opposite. That I can read the meeting of December the 16th. It says in our report, as to the relationship with the proposed report meets the favor of the city by developing a commercial of mixed type. And today it says the design of the proposed development goes, the development, could you clarify the difference between the two? Yes. that package there were explanation. I would like to have the clarification. And the public was also present at the public hearing. I think it was indicated that there is part of the land that has a proper zoning, but as to the municipal plan, the soil allows a mixed development, but it doesn't. All the other proposals doesn't go together. It meets all the proposal of municipal plan, but there is a section. I think it's explained. There is a section of the projects that meet as certain principles of the municipal plan, but it goes against other principles. And one of the things that came out of your analysis, it says that an analysis of the noise might be needed to know if the proposed uh, solution would fix the noise problem. If you get make a determination based on revised plan, or if there's something else that will be done, maybe you have an opinion on that. The opinion I can tell you tonight, we are not expert with the noise. What was presented on Advice 66 was presented that there would be a burn of 3 meters high that represents 10 feet. However, we're not expert to know if a berm is sufficient to break the noise, considering the location, the height, and everything. But the same as the engineering is asking a traffic on traffic, you can ask a study on the noise also. With the proposal, that is, what is that a condition that the council wants to impose? Thank you. Any other questions on the substitute resolution? Councilor Beliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, it says that the number of parking that was proposed for the project goes beyond the standard of the municipality. Could I know how many parking space there would be? We're talking about to answer that questions, and of course, there's information. Um, Building B and D is a strip mall. It can have an influence on the parking, but when we analyze the site in the zoning bylaw, the number of required space for the proposed project is a total of 208 parking space, with an additional 15 for the handicap parking. We propose 564 parking space for it, and a total of 18 for handicap parking. There is a surplus on the site of 356 parking space, and a surplus of 3 for handicap persons. That would include all the buildings that are proposed on this subdivision. Yes, we had to consider the location of the site that has a proper zoning, since it's a whole, and we calculate for all the buildings according to the use of all the buildings. And you're saying that for a building of 58,000 square feet, it needs only 300 some odds parking. No, total is 208. That includes a larger store. Yes. Just to give you a space for 40 meters is how it's calculated. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councilor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. If I understand the report, we say we don't have necessary information to realize a complete analysis of all the issues. So, the resolution that is proposed by Councilor Cormier, will it allow you to get all the information to make a proper analysis, a complete analysis of the issues? And to see, to be able to give us conditions that we should require for the rezoning to be completed. At the end of the day, Mr. Thibodeau, it's up to you to vote on the kind of conditions that you're mandating us to. You're asking us to impose terms and conditions, but some terms and conditions, I don't have the information. For instance, when we mentioned the study, the traffic study, it was a request that was asked since the beginning of the process, and we have yet to receive it. If we put a condition, for instance, before we are able to allow a building permit, we must have a study on the traffic. For us, it's hard to see what the results will be at the end of the study as long as we don't have it. There are certain terms and conditions we can apply that will have to meet a certain conditions at the end, but some will be according to your wish, according to your decision that you'll make. It's probably something we'll have to bring back to you to see if you're at ease with the conditions. Everything will be within the wording or the way of writing it. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Gadet, does the mandate, according to this resolution that we would be giving, would it allow the staff to interact with the developers and the interested citizens, especially in the immediate zone, immediate area? I don't see why not. The question for Mr. Fredette, probably I would prefer a mandate that the council would give to the staff. If I understood correctly your question, it would be different parties would sit at a table and see if they couldn't find piece of solutions. Essentially, will you do it in camera with your staff, or will the people who are interested, the promoters and the citizens from the area, will they be able to talk to you? Your worship, to answer that question, the power is yours if that's something you want to do. The council in the past has created some ad hoc committee on different questions as to whether it is our role to sit with the developers and the residents and be the umpire. It's up to you. We are willing to meet with them, but at the end of the day, if the council is not willing to study the possibility of having compromises, if our mandate, if we follow the resolution, if I understood correctly, is to make recommendations as to the amended mandate. That's the mandate that seemed to have been given to us. Now, whether there's another resolution where we would be asked to be at the table, at the bargaining table, if I can use the word bargaining, it's up to you to pass a resolution. If I understand correctly, there would be no initiative from you to try and be the referee or to promote the best agreement. It's up to you to ask me, to mandate me, your worship. If it's your wish, would you make an amendment? Either a new proposal, an amendment to that resolution to ask that there be a consultation table or conciliation table. I don't know what the proper word is, but at least that there be a mean of discussions between representatives of citizens and the developers to see if there are ways of reaching agreement. As such, is 2 weeks sufficient to come to an agreement, an acceptable agreement? It depends on the will. If the staff is ready, if the developer is ready, if there's representative from the citizens who are ready to do it within the next 2 weeks. I'm waiting for an amendment or a new resolution. I move an amendment that the council mandate the planning service to communicate with the interested parties to come to a discussion that could improve the projects and make it acceptable for all parties involved. We have an amendment has been moved. Is there a second there? Seconded by Councilor Beliveau. Now on the amendment. Mr. Beliveau. So we should not pass before. No. It's an amendment. All right. Resolution was presented and seconded. Now we are on the amendment. Any question on the amendment? Mr. Leblanc, is it a question on the amendment or on the resolution? Thank you, Your Worship. It's a combination of both. The motion from Councilor Cormier is there seems to be some changes being proposed as to the site. And the original request was to mandate the staff to look at the changes on the plan and come back with recommendations or solutions. And Councilor Godet is asking that before February 23rd, if parties can meet. In the meantime, if I understand, that's what I understand. Yes, thank you. Councilor Cormier. Okay. Madame Dallaire. I'm not against the idea that the people meet if the will is there to meet. I think we can impose our staff the will to create that table. Whether the meeting is held, whether the meeting will be held or not, it's beyond control. My worry is, do we have all the necessary information to come to an agreement if we don't have reports that will study the impact of the noise and the traffic to allow this? I don't know. Says Dallaire. Maybe I can answer your first question from earlier as to whether we can put some conditions in our initial report. In our Advice 66, we identified certain items that we felt were a must and where we saw some conflicts. But these conflicts, if ever the committee is put together, the developers with the citizens and the staff, I think that is where I believe, as a professional, that we will have to see if there is an agreement. As to the study, if some information is lacking, as to the traffic study, and the council gives an agreement on the 3 or 4 main concerns as to the proximity of building A, then the study can be conditional. It doesn't mean that the project can go forward if it requires certain conditions that the developer is not able to meet. If ever the project was to go forward with 3 readings, following the analysis and after receiving, if there are conditions that the developer cannot meet, the project will not go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. So on the amendment, ready for the question. I don't see any other lights. On the amendments, all those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried. The amendment is carried. Now on the motion as amended.
Amendé.
The motion as amended. All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. So that resolution is carried as amended. Thank you. Next item. Thank you. 10.2.2. Following this resolution that has been passed, it is recommended to have a resolution to put forward this resolution to a future. Is someone to read it? Moved by Councilor Colmier, seconded by Councilor Thibodeau. On the question? All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carry 10.2.2 is put forward to a later date for February the 23rd. 10.2.3, Mr. Melanson, Roman Catholic Archbishop of Moncton Subdivision, land for public purpose. Recommendation of the PAC is to accept the preliminary, which 3.4% of the area in the subdivision to be vested as land that represent 2417 square meter, which represent $11,310.75, which is equivalent to 1% of 6.6%. And that is the matter for tonight. For resolution, Councilor Berido. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council accepts the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee relating to the acceptance of the tentative plan of the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Moncton, which establishes at 3.4% of the area in the subdivision to be vested as lands for public purposes, which represent 2,417 square meters, and the acceptance also of a sum of money in lieu of lands for public purpose in the amount of $11,310.75, which is equivalent to 1% of 6.6% of the market value of Lot 15-2 created in the subdivision. I so move. Moved by Councilor Brito, seconded by Councilor Thibodeau. On the question, Councilor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe it's in our package, but I was looking at the public utility land. Do we identify which portion will be the public utility? Because isn't there a walking trail? On page 75 of the package. So it's what you see at the bottom of the photograph. The trail was at a location that was not on the city's property. We had agreement with the Archbishop to have a right-of-way. This will place the trail on the property of the municipality. Because now the public utility land that goes from Central as far as Vanier, and where does it then? See your property in the back. It goes between Gilbert-Finn and Grégoire. There is a trail that crosses Vanier, and then there is a public utility to follow the trail and would go towards Amiro. That's why the green space continues. So the trail between Grégoire and Gilbert-Finn would reach Amiro. Everything would be on the municipal property. Thank you. Councilor Béliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. Do I understand that this resolution would mean that the green space that would be in that subdivision is represented by what we see in green in the design? I can say yes. Yes, it's a large size of land. That's why it looks small on the map. But the only thing that I'm asking is the balance of the lot is much greater than the green section. There won't be any green space within that whole lot for any activity, whether they're active or passive. I can answer in part to the question, but I think we have the Department of Recreation can better answer the question, but they have considered the trail, and we want to make sure within the municipality that the public utility being a form of a park and that it brings another park. So we have a park of the ward at Tranquil and a public utility behind Malafra School. So that was considered to the proximity of other parks by establishing a liaison to another trail. And by considering the development of a land of such a size, even if it was only a passive park, a place for people to sit, simply a wooded area be maintained. Maybe I can let the recreation department answer, but we'll have private backyard or front yard where they have private areas. The analysis was made to consider the environment and the infrastructure, passive and active. Mr. Burke, also on the west of Central Street, there is a public utility land. I don't have the size with me, but on the other side of the street. What we look at is really the proximity within 800 meters, and on the southern side of Avant-Garde, there is the Gilbert Finn Trail. There were 5 places, including the future park on the west side of Central Street. For us, it was to make sure that the trail would be on a public utility and that eventually we can bring it towards the middle. That's what we look at. Your Worship, my concerns remain the same. It's a land that could be simply destroyed. That whole wood area would be lost to the municipality. Have a hard time to see if there is a space that is not very great would allow a meeting area and
rassembler les gens.
it's not a place for people to meet. I have a hard time. Thank you for your observation, Councillor Gadet. It's similar to the last 2 interventions. It's good to make sure that the trail be of a proper width and that it serves the need of the citizens. But I believe that the space that is required here is sufficient to allow it to be a community space, as we would call it. I still repeat, I still say, you can always accept money, but a piece of land, when it's compromised, it's hard to move as far as space concerned. So I see, really, depending on how the streets are organized, the playground or the community space will be close to the cemetery. That's the only flexible area that is close to it. And I challenge, there's a playground, 800 meters. First of all, it's almost twice the distance that is recommended, 500 meters. And to cross Central Street for young people, for youngsters, I would not recommend it. question of speed, traffic. So it's not realistic, in my opinion. So I have a hard time. I have problems with this resolution as it is presented. Thank you for your observations. There's no other questions on the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Against nay. Can we have a raise your hand? Those who are against, 3. The resolution is carried. 5 against 3. Next, 10.2.4. Vieux-Moulin subdivision, tentative plan, the PAC want it to be accepted, and the acceptance over and above an amount of money in the amount of $4,000, which represents 8% of market value of the land to be developed in the subdivision. We talk about 5 lots in subdivision. So it is for the approval of the council to go ahead to read the resolution. Councillor Thibodeau. Your worship, that council accepts the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee relating to the acceptance of the tentative plan of Vieux Moulin Unit 4 subdivision and the acceptance also of a sum of money in lieu of lands for public purpose in the amount of $4,000, which represents 8% of the market value of the land to be developed in this subdivision. I so move. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau. Seconded by Councillor Nolan on the question. On the question, Mr. Leblanc. Your worship. If I look in our documentations, the zoning of the parcel is mixed housing. It is to we intend to take that parcel and divide it to make it into individual lot. Is that it? So if it comes to the point that it would be, they would propose houses in series, since it is divided in pieces, we could not. It depends on the size of the houses. You have houses with the zoning, we can subdivide from the medium wall, but we talk with the developer. That's not his intention. It is to develop the same kinds of single family unit. That's the meaning of my questions. We have met the developer. We know what his intentions are, and that's why we're working with him. The maximum of lot that he could divide. That's what he wanted to do. We're at ease with what he wants. The topology of the ward is not for houses in row houses. It becomes complicated because. Thank you, Councillor Beliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. I understand in this case that there is an activity center on Du Moulin for children. What would be the distance from the proposed location on Tillman? Would someone have it? It's on my street. I can tell you. I used to live on Du Moulin. We were walking. It's less than 200 meters. It fills the mandate, Your Worship. There's no need to cross Melanson. I see the reasoning for it. Councillor Godet, do we remember or do we know why that space had been retained or not developed with the rest of Tillman Street? it's a personal matter between the property and what he sold or what he was ready to sell to the developer who did develop Tillman, Leo, and Dumoulin to know why they kept them. I would tend to believe personnel, but they're ready to develop today. I think for a while it was a matter of leaving it to a trial. I think that was the initial reason. I think today it's still the case. But piece of land will be left to a member of the family. It was, from what you know, it was left behind. That's not a question we ask. That's the explanation that was given to us. Thank you. If there's no other questions, all those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Resolution is carried. No municipal bylaws tonight. No notice of motion that I receive. Inquiries and announcement by members of council. We will begin on my right. Mr. Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for tonight. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. Well, Your Worship, I would like to wish a beautiful Valentine Day to the lovers for next Saturday, for the whole population of Greater Dieppe, as well as our staff. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank the staff of the city for a work well done, especially the snow removers. It was a difficult week. No, job well done. I understand it's not easy, and we were warned that you were working in conditions that were not favorable. Keep doing a good job. The council supports you. Thank you, Mrs. Dalla. Nothing for me tonight. Thank you. Councillor Gadet. Yes, first of all, if someone wants to learn the myths of the history of Acadia tomorrow at 8:30 at Igloo, there is a conference that will be given and which will be greatly appreciated. Everyone is welcome. I would also like to say that the traffic is continuing to operate properly at the public library. The use of the computers and the consultation room is very busy. Thank you to the staff that are trying to meet the needs. And when we consider the traffic of our library compared to others in the province, there lacks at least one full-time person, and the request was made by the commission with the province to add a person in the municipal library in the app. It is also the month of a black month. More and more we have outsiders and others who move to the app. There's a lot of activities, a lot of conferences, a lot of opportunities of exchange that are planned during the month of February. I encourage everyone to be more sensitized to that matter. I would like to mention that yesterday the name of Dieppe was at that time the area of the parish of Sainte Therese. It was incorporated by the province. So it went from the Hameau of Légier Corner that was not incorporated to the village of Dieppe. So Dieppe as name, as an incorporated name, turned 69 yesterday. And I believe that it is good to know it. It's good to see what there was at that time. And the first mayor that was elected was Sifroy Leblanc. Sifroy Leblanc was the father of dentist Clément Leblanc, for those who remember him. And Mr. Matthew Esliger was the legal counselor, lawyer. In the following year, 2 years in 48, Dieppe built the two houses that were built during the war in Lake Burn. And in the article, it is mentioned that it was a daring vision, but it served the community well because there were waterways, the conducts, and I'm sure the engineering director will smile even if these pipes are ready to be replaced. That's what I wanted to mention. That on February the 8th, 1946, Dieppe received its name. Village 52 became a town. In 2002, it became a city.
C'est ma
Merci.
contribution pour ce
That's all for tonight. Thank you. Councillor Cormier, nothing to add. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. Same thing here, nothing to add. Thank you. Councillor Béliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of the Friendship Carnival. The activities were challenged by the weather, but everything was nevertheless a success. The people mentioned that they had a lot of fun. The only other thing, Your Worship, that I want to raise tonight is simply the snow removal on our property, or where we're trying to put the snow that is quite high is to encourage the people to make sure that with blowers that we put the snow as orderly as possible, where we see that some situation is such that the snow be placed by the neighbor's house. The polite word would be that the neighbor be made aware. Does he mind? Is there something that could be done? Whether it's an exit, whether it's air exchangers or whatever it may be. And more we see in Dieppe natural gas installation that can be quite delicate. And we know when we blow the snow, some piece of ice is mixed in it. And we've been lucky so far. I encourage the people to talk with their neighbors and explain, if need be, the things to do. If the neighbor says, no, I don't want you to blow your snow, well, then put it somewhere else. Make sure that there's peace in the neighborhood. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. I want to underline the recent visit of 24 youth from Angers. I want to thank the young people who were involved here and the parents also. It took place from January 24th to February. Our French friends got to know the Canadian winter. They got more, and the return trip from our people will be the 2nd to 11th of April. Parents of these young people are organizing activities for fundraising, and we encourage you to encourage them. It's a good experience. I would like to remind you, talking about snow and solutions, critical solutions, as you mentioned, with the natural gas, but when we think about the fire hydrant. I know that every fire hydrant were cleaned throughout the city. If people are listening to us where it was not done, let us know. But it was reported that all the fire hydrants were clean. We'd like to encourage the people to adopt a fire hydrant at their house because the time that will be safe for our firemen when there is a major storm and the fire hydrant is covered with snow, the minute and a half or 2 minutes they must take to clean it is the 2 minutes that could probably save your life. I'm lucky that I have a neighbor that clear it with his snowblower. He does his driveway as far as the fire hydrants, and that is a relief for everyone in the neighborhood. It's a good program. It's a safe program we want to encourage in our municipality. Besides that, I have nothing else, and I wish you all a good evening.